I still remember the first time I truly saw her, not just noticed her, but really saw her, and how my life changed in a way I didn't recognize until much later. Her name was Madeline, and she had this way of filling a room without making a sound, drawing your attention without effort. I was 35, convinced I had already learned what love could do, and then she came along and made everything I thought I knew feel fragile, temporary, like sand slipping through my fingers. At first it was innocent, almost mundane, shared lunches at work, casual texts that made me smile unexpectedly, coffee breaks that stretched longer than they should. I remember thinking, this feels different. It wasn't that she was perfect. She had quirks, sharp opinions, and a stubborn streak that clashed with mine, but it was intoxicating. I wanted to know everything about her, even the things she might not tell me. We became friends quickly, and then inevitably something more. A subtle touch here, a glance there, a laugh that lingered longer than it should. I convinced myself I was falling, but I didn't know how fast or how deep. It wasn't love in the way I understood it. It was something darker, more consuming, that made rational thought impossible. The first warning signs were small, almost laughable at the time. A text she received that she glanced at nervously, conversations she seemed to avoid when I entered a room, little inconsistencies in her stories. I dismissed them. I wanted to believe the best, because she made me feel alive in ways I hadn't felt in years, and I was naive enough to think that wanting to believe her was enough to ignore the creeping unease. Then came the night that changed everything. We had dinner at my apartment, wine flowing, the city lights casting long shadows across the walls. She laughed, leaned in close, and whispered something that made my heart race. "There's something I need to tell you." My mind froze. This was it, the moment where truth or lies would be revealed. She hesitated, eyes darting, then smiled. A small, deceptive smile that made me feel simultaneously relieved and unsettled. "I have to be honest," she said. Her voice was soft but deliberate. "There's someone else." The room tilted. The wine glass slipped from my hand, shattering on the floor, but the sound barely registered in my ears. My first thought was disbelief. My second was denial. Surely she didn't mean it, surely it was a joke. But the way she looked at me, the tremor in her voice, made it impossible to dismiss. She tried to explain, fumbling through excuses that sounded rehearsed, rehearsed in the way only someone who had lied countless times could make them sound convincing. I listened, torn between fury, heartbreak, and a strange, unyielding need to understand. I needed to know why, how, and when. That night I realized something terrifying. Betrayal doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it sneaks in quietly, disguised as honesty, and once it settles in your life, it changes everything. The love I felt for Madeline had been real, or as real as anything can be, and yet in one moment it became tainted, irreparably broken. I spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, tracing the cracks in the plaster, trying to map the cracks in my own heart. The silence was deafening. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just thought, and in that thinking I began plotting a way to uncover the full truth, to follow the threads of her deception wherever they might lead. Because I had learned, too late, that you can survive betrayal, but only if you understand it completely. And I was determined to understand every lie she had ever told. The days after her confession were strange, suspended in a surreal kind of limbo. Madeline acted as if nothing had happened, smiling at me over coffee, brushing past me in the kitchen, laughing at jokes I didn't even remember making. Every movement, every word felt rehearsed, like she had anticipated my reaction and built a perfect performance to maintain control. And part of me hated myself for still wanting her. I tried to act normal. I forced myself to work, to go out with friends, to eat, to sleep, but none of it helped. Every time my phone buzzed, I expected a message from her admitting she had lied again, or a clue or an explanation. And sometimes I caught her slipping up. A look in her eyes when she thought I wasn't watching. A phone call she answered too quickly and whispered into. Little things, almost imperceptible, but enough to set my gut on fire with suspicion. I started keeping track. Small notes in my phone, scribbles on paper trying to map her routines, the patterns of deception. It wasn't just one man. There were whispers of others, little hints she left behind, signs I had ignored. And the more I uncovered, the more I realized that her life was a carefully orchestrated maze designed to trap me in uncertainty, to keep me guessing, to keep me addicted to her. One night curiosity overtook caution. I followed her to a small, dimly lit cafe in a part of the city I rarely visited. She said she was meeting a friend, someone from work. But as I watched from a distance, she met a man I didn't recognize, tall and confident, and the way she smiled at him, soft, intimate, familiar, made my chest tighten painfully. They didn't notice me. They didn't need to. And at that moment, I understood just how far her deceit ran. I didn't confront them. I couldn't. Watching them together from the shadows was like staring at a wound that refused to close. My mind raced, trying to piece together what I had missed, what she had hidden, what her motives were. Each laugh, each touch, each stolen glance confirmed what I had feared. I was living with a woman who had been planning her betrayals as carefully as any architect builds a structure. Driving home, I felt like a ghost in my own life. The city lights smeared across the windshield, mirroring the chaos in my mind. I thought about all the times I had trusted her, all the nights I had gone to sleep believing in us. And I realized with a cold clarity that trust was gone, irreversibly gone. When I got home, she was there, smiling, humming while washing dishes. She moved around me, seemingly unaware of the storm in my chest. I couldn't speak. I didn't want to. Words felt useless, hollow. Instead, I sat on the couch, pretending to read, but every fiber of my being was focused on her. The subtle gestures, the tone of her voice, the way she avoided looking me directly in the eyes. The confrontation came in pieces, not all at once. I asked about her day, about her friends, about the projects she had mentioned. She answered quickly, too quickly, always smiling, deflecting. And yet beneath the surface I saw the cracks. A hesitation, a fleeting shadow of guilt, a pause that gave away everything. I wanted to shout, to demand answers, to confront her fully, but I knew I had to wait. Patience was the only weapon I had in a battle where she had always held the upper hand. Every day became a delicate dance of observation, questioning, and silent calculation. I learned the subtle signals of deception, a delayed text, a diverted gaze, the slight tremor in her hand. I had become a detective in my own life, tracing the lines of betrayal with precision, trying to uncover the full map of her duplicity. And as I worked piece by piece, the magnitude of her betrayal became clear. This wasn't a one-time mistake or a fleeting lapse in judgment. This was deliberate. She had constructed a parallel life, one hidden in shadows, running alongside ours, and I was trapped in the middle, powerless, furious, and terrified. By now, I had crossed the line from suspicion to obsession. I no longer trusted her words, her gestures, or even the silence between us. Every moment was scrutinized, every action catalogued. And the more I watched, the more I realized the truth. Madeline had perfected the art of living two lives, and I had been blind to it, foolishly believing love would shield me from reality. One evening, I decided to follow her again, more deliberately this time. She claimed to be attending a work event, but the route she took didn't match any address I knew. My stomach churned as I tailed her through dimly lit streets, keeping distance yet never losing sight. She parked at a secluded building on the outskirts of town, and a man I had never met was waiting outside, leaning casually against the wall. Her smile as she approached him hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't a fleeting glance or an innocent hug. It was intimate, familiar, electric. She leaned in, whispered something that made him laugh, and for a moment I thought my chest would explode. Watching them together, seeing how effortlessly she had given herself to someone else, I felt a rage I couldn't name, an ache I couldn't contain. I didn't confront them. I simply stayed in the shadows, trembling, overwhelmed by betrayal so complete it felt like a force of nature. I wanted to scream, to tear her from his arms, to demand the truth, but the reality was undeniable. She had chosen to create a life beyond me, carefully constructed, full of deceit and deliberate omission. Returning home, the apartment felt suffocating. Every familiar corner, every picture frame, every item we had shared became a reminder of the world she had taken from me. I sat alone, trying to breathe, trying to make sense of the chaos she had wrought. But clarity came only in the harshest terms. I had loved her fully, blindly, and it had been returned to me in fragments of lies. The following days were a study in patience and quiet observation. I confronted her subtly at first, probing for inconsistencies, asking innocent questions that revealed the gaps in her stories. She smiled, deflected, and charmed her way around every inquiry, but the cracks were visible. A hesitation, a pause, the faintest flicker of guilt in her eyes proof that the web I was unraveling had been meticulously spun. Then I discovered messages, hidden texts, screenshots, snippets of conversations with names I had never known. My heart sank as I read them, realizing she had not only maintained her deception but had expanded it, entwining herself in multiple lives, carefully segmented to ensure I never noticed. My entire relationship with her, every tender word, every intimate moment, suddenly felt poisoned. It wasn't enough to merely know. I needed to understand. I needed to trace every lie, map every encounter, confront every secret. And as I pieced together the extent of her betrayal, I realized I had been living in a fiction, an illusion of love that had been meticulously fabricated to mask a truth far more brutal. Betrayal, I learned, isn't a single act. It is 1,000 quiet moments, calculated and deliberate, leaving you gasping in disbelief as your reality collapses around you. And in the wreckage of that collapse, I began to see the shape of my next move. One that would uncover every truth, no matter how deeply buried, no matter how much it would hurt. The confrontation I had been avoiding finally became inevitable. I had gathered every piece of evidence, traced every lie, and observed every hidden rendezvous. The more I knew, the more I realized how carefully she had orchestrated her life without me. Madeline wasn't reckless. She was meticulous, deliberate, and frighteningly detached. And I had been living under the illusion of intimacy while she moved freely in parallel worlds I could barely comprehend. That evening I confronted her. I didn't shout, I didn't plead, I simply told her I knew. Her reaction was subtle at first, a flicker of surprise, a sharp intake of breath. Then the mask slipped. For the first time I saw hesitation, uncertainty, a brief, vulnerable shadow behind the carefully curated exterior. It didn't last long. She recovered quickly, her charm returning as if nothing had happened, but the damage was done. She knew I had seen everything. She tried to explain, fumbling, weaving half-truths with fragments of sincerity. I listened, numbed, trying to decipher what was real and what was a performance. There was no excuse for what she had done. There was only the cold, undeniable fact that she had created a web of lies that ensnared me completely. Every touch, every word, every whispered confession of love had been layered over a foundation of deception. I told her to leave, and she did, calmly, without resistance, as if nothing mattered. The apartment, once full of warmth and laughter, became a hollow shell. Every corner echoed with memories that now stung, every object a reminder of the life that had never truly existed. I walked through it alone, feeling the weight of betrayal pressing down, a suffocating reminder of trust broken beyond repair. In the weeks that followed, I confronted the deepest truth. I had to rebuild myself from the wreckage. Betrayal leaves a mark, not just on the heart but on identity, perception, and the fragile sense of safety we take for granted. I couldn't trust her, I couldn't trust others, and I couldn't even trust my own judgment for a while. Every decision felt like a test, every interaction a minefield of potential lies and disappointments. I started small. I revisited old routines, old passions, and old friends I had neglected in my obsessive focus on her. Slowly, I reclaimed fragments of myself that had been swallowed by the relationship. The world outside continued to move, indifferent to my heartbreak, and I realized that survival wasn't about confrontation or revenge. It was about endurance, about finding strength in the hollow spaces left behind. And yet the memory of her lingered. Every laugh, every gesture, every touch I had once cherished now carried the weight of deception. It was a paradox. Loving her had been intoxicating, and losing her was devastating, but understanding the truth, however painful, became a strange kind of liberation. I could not go back. I could not undo the past, but I could move forward armed with clarity, experience, and an unwavering resolve to protect myself from such illusions again. Betrayal, I realized, is not just about the act, it's about the transformation that follows. It forces you to question everything, to rebuild from ashes, and to confront the darkness inside others and yourself. It was a lesson learned in the harshest way imaginable, one that left scars, but also forged resilience I hadn't known I possessed. Time, as cruel as it is patient, began to heal the raw edges of my pain. The apartment, once a mausoleum of memories, slowly became just a space I occupied. I replaced the pictures, moved the furniture, and filled the silence with small, deliberate acts of reclaiming my life. Each day without her was both a wound and a balm, reminding me of loss, yet proving that survival was possible. I still thought about her sometimes, not with longing or hope, but with clarity. I remembered the warmth of her hand, the sound of her laughter, the intimacy we shared. But I also remembered the deceit, the carefully concealed web of lies, the betrayals stacked like bricks around my heart. Love had existed, yes, but so had manipulation, and the two were inseparably entwined in memory. Months later, I saw her again, completely by chance, in a crowded cafe. She was radiant, laughing, leaning into a man whose presence seemed to eclipse mine entirely. My chest tightened, but not with jealousy. This time it was something else, understanding. She had her life. I had mine. The illusion of control, of possession, had vanished. I had survived, stronger and wiser than before. I learned then that betrayal doesn't just break hearts, it forces introspection. It teaches you about trust, resilience, and the boundaries you must set for yourself. I had loved deeply, and I had lost profoundly, but in that loss I had discovered a version of myself I didn't know existed, a man capable of enduring, capable of discerning truth from deception, capable of moving forward even when the past still cast shadows. Love is fragile, but survival is fierce. Betrayal leaves scars that never fully fade, but those scars carry stories of endurance and lessons of caution. I emerged from the wreckage of my relationship with Madeline transformed, not bitter, not broken, but awake. Every memory of her was a reminder of both the beauty and the danger of intimacy, of trust, and of the vulnerability that comes with loving someone fully. And though I carry the echoes of what we shared, I have also reclaimed myself. The man who once trusted blindly now moves with careful awareness. The heart that once shattered now beats with cautious strength. And the lesson remains clear. Love can change you, betray you, and devastate you. But if you survive it, you become someone impossible to break. Some stories end with reconciliation, some with tragedy. But mine ended with me. Standing, whole, and aware that the deepest wounds sometimes forge the strongest selves.